will apparently just become more accessible. It is no wonder that when the American people finally had the chance to see what was in this hideous bill, it was so unpopular that my Republican counterparts had to rebrand the name. But just because you put working families in the title doesn't mean you are not screwing them over. The reality is there is no amount of sugarcoating that can undo the damage that will be done by this disastrous legislation.
Welcome back. This is what happens when someone who's actually lived the American dream stands up and says, enough is enough. A Super Bowl champion, a proud, unapologetic MAGA voice, looks Ilhan Omar dead in the eye and completely dismantles her argument without yelling, without losing his cool. Just cold, hard facts, pure backbone, and total command of the room. You could feel the shift the second he opened his mouth. They call politics theater, but sometimes it's a straight-up reality check that hits like a freight train. If you're sick of watching America get lectured by people who seem to resent at every chance they get, hit subscribe right now, because this moment deserves to be broken down properly. Let's dive in.
Colleagues claim that their solution in the one big beautiful bill will somehow make college cheaper for working families. This is the same bill that cut $1 trillion out of Medicaid and over $180 billion from SNAP. The logic is hard to follow. By leaving millions without health care and struggling to buy groceries, higher education will apparently just become more accessible. It is no wonder that when the American people finally had the chance to see what was in this hideous bill, it was so unpopular that my Republican counterparts had to rebrand the name. But just because you put working families in the title doesn't mean you are not screwing them over. The reality is there is no amount of sugarcoating that can undo the damage that will be done by this disastrous legislation.
I want to start off with just, first of all, agreeing, Ms. Morgan, with your comments about how bad things are. Explosion of tuition, enrollment in which kids come in, they enroll, they quit, they leave with debt they'll never pay off, with job skills they'll never have, and not be able to really build the American dream. But this isn't from the last 6 months of the family working tax plan. It's from the last 16 years when in 2010, President Obama, through the Affordable Care Act, took everything from the private sector and put it into the government. So the government has controlled this for the last 16 years. We cannot look at the last 6 months and say because our reforms, all these things are happening. We're now about to take care of that. I think the biggest thing that I'm concerned about is how little we know in our country about capitalism. We are the #1 destination in the world because of something called capitalism. Now, just quickly, what does capitalism mean, and what does it mean to this industry here? It's about return on investment. It's competition, it's merit, it's value, and the product of all that is profit. Now, if it's a good program, there's a lot of profit, which it should be. It should spread throughout the entire country. People should be wanting to take advantage of it. If it's a terrible product, it should go broke. What we're finding out is that the government is insulated from this concept. They can have a terrible competition, no value, no merit, and still make a lot of profit off the customer, the students, who pay their life's blood for the rest of their life trying to pay off loans. So we need to get back to teaching that. I think that when I listen to my friends here from Utah and Florida, I'll say this about Utah. We lead the country in terms of small business startups. There's an entrepreneurial concept. There's a culture in which we're trying to figure out how to give the best return on investment to where we're dealing with. And I think the same thing, the way I listen to how you guys are solving things, same thing with Florida. We need to realize that government solutions have never worked. I just came back from Latin America last week. They are realizing after the last couple of years, they want to get away from that stuff. So no, it is not the government that's going to give us the out of this. It's going to be entrepreneurs, innovators, those who truly are in the game for the right reasons. That is, make sure our kids are #1, and not the institutions, not the professors, not those around just kind of sucking in everything they can from government payouts. So I'm excited about the fact that we're having this conversation. We can all agree it's broken. It's cost too much. We're getting too little of a return on investment with our kids coming out, not being prepared to go to work, not being hopeful for their future, being angry about everything. That's not what our education should be about. And the other thing is this. Let's just make sure we're transparent enough that everyone realizes they don't have to go into debt to go to four-year college. How about trades? If that could be their way out, if they could look at that as being their way to achieve their dreams, let them go for that. I think it's very helpful that we finally have competition for higher education. It's going to make higher education better. It's going to make sure that the best prove themselves, and outcomes will allow parents to say, okay, I will invest in this, or the kids will invest in this because it'll give me a good return on investment. And if it does not, then that institution should go broke, period. So I'm excited about the fact we're finally, over the last 6 months, putting in reforms. 6 months. So please, as you go back and think about how terrible...
What made this exchange so damn powerful wasn't shouting. It wasn't insults. It was ice cold clarity. When the Super Bowl champ, a guy who clawed his way to the top through discipline, grit, and real belief in this country, confronted Ilhan Omar, he didn't dance around. He went straight for the throat of her argument. He challenged the tired, worn-out narrative that America is fundamentally broken and oppressive, and instead laid out something simple and undeniable. This country gave him opportunity, and it can't give it to anyone willing to work for it. You could see Omar tried to pivot, tried to reframe, tried to spin, but he stayed rock steady. That's what wins debates: calm, unshakable confidence. He pointed out the glaring contradiction in trashing the very system that allowed immigrants, minorities, and working-class kids to rise to national prominence. It wasn't personal. It was philosophical. And that's exactly why it hit so hard. There's an old saying: hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. What you saw in that room was strength versus ideology, and strength won. He spoke from lived experience, military service, pro sports, public office, not theory, not slogans, reality. And here's the part the media won't highlight: the reaction, the subtle nods, the heavy silence after his closing point. That's when you know the message landed like a ton of bricks. Because when truth is spoken plainly and without apology, it doesn't need volume. This wasn't about scoring cheap political points. It was about defending the idea that America is worth believing in. That personal responsibility matters. That gratitude matters. And that if you're going to stand in Congress and criticize this country nonstop, you better be ready for someone to stand up and challenge you hard. If you respect leaders who aren't afraid to speak directly and defend American values without flinching, smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and hit subscribe right now. We're not letting this slide. More coming your way. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp. Stay proud. See you in the next one.